Happy Monday, everybody. Happy post-Alabama scrimmage weekend, Monday Roll Pod recap show. Recording on Monday. We'll get this out soon after that as well. Mike, Alex, how we doing? How's the weekend?
Good. It's good.
Good. It's the first day of school. It's the best day out of the year for parents.
There we go. I know it got started earlier in Atlanta, so my parents used to say the same thing. We are, again, recording this on Monday. Last time we were here was a Friday, kind of talking about what we wanted to see, or I guess not see, try to learn coming out of this closed off Alabama scrimmage. I feel like we kind of talked about there the updates. There isn't a whole lot of updates, but we'll get right into it. We'll start with quarterback talk. We're going to try to keep this as a hard cap with quarterbacks, because again, there wasn't a whole lot to come out. I know Alex has a great piece that came out Monday morning on our site. You can go read that there, but we'll start with you, Alex, since you had the most thoughts this morning. Just what'd you learn? What'd you not learn coming out of the weekend at the quarterback position?
I learned that it's status quo, that Ty is very much the first team quarterback and is very much in control of the offense. And you talk to people who were at the scrimmage, and it's just like the vibe of it is he's the guy. Like everything kind of flows smoothly in his hands. And while Austin Mack and Keelan Russell have their moments, and Austin had a really good scrimmage, the consistency piece of it is not the same. Ty is just on a different level with that. And when you combine that with the fact that when I asked Ryan Grubb what's gonna take for Ty to go from the de facto starter to the actual starter, it was basically, in a nutshell, consistency. Showing up every week, doing the little things right. And you connect those dots, and then you connect the dot of Kalen DeBoer saying, Mike can tell me, I think it was pretty much unprompted, basically saying we want to have this decision wrapped up by the second scrimmage, or at the end of the second scrimmage. It's Ty. I don't think there's any question anymore. All we're waiting for is an official announcement. As I wrote in the story, it's still only, step 1, 2, 3, wherever it is in the process. It's not even the middle or the end, because we still need to see what he can look like. But at the same time, no setbacks from him. He continues to lead the charge. And I, as I wrote today, very confident that when the decision is made, it will be him.
Right. Yeah. The timeline part to me doesn't surprise me, because I feel like that was probably the plan all along. And I feel like even going back to the spring when DeBoer was talking about that, he basically said a few weeks into camp, you need to have your starter decided. So I don't think it would have gone any longer than that, given what we talked about in the last show. Like, you get past the second scrimmage, you're basically in prep mode for Florida State full time, because you have a couple practices that week, and then you go right into the week of practice for the game. So you needed to do it by the end of the second scrimmage. I think it was just a matter of, would you do it early? And look, I think if Kalen DeBoer, look, I'll put it this way: if Ryan Grubb comes out tomorrow and he talks on Tuesday and he says Ty Simpson's our starter, would that shock me? No, because of the event. It might shock me the fact that Ryan Grubb would announce it, but like, they could probably say it right now, is my point. So it feels like a little bit of a formality to wait until whenever the exact announcement comes, whether it's Saturday afternoon or Sunday or Monday or whatever. But I guess you're trying to do right by the other two guys and say, we're giving you a full chance. We're giving you through the second scrimmage to kind of show what you can do. And that might include them, Mac and Keelan Russell, I'm talking about, still getting first team reps in the scrimmage, the second scrimmage. So yeah, nothing's too surprising about it. I do think the number 2 battle, I want to say it's more interesting, but I would have thought if Keelan Russell's trajectory kept going up from the spring and into fall camp, that he would have had a very good chance to be the number 2 to start the season. I feel like I might back off that a little bit, just based on kind of what the vibes have been lately on Keelan, which it feels like, he's got a little ways to go. And even Kalen, I'll find the exact quote, but essentially kind of singled out Ty and Austin when he was giving his answers on the quarterbacks, and I transcribed it, so I should be able to find it in my email. The exact quote I'm talking about. where did he say? Commanding the huddle. I think your two guys that have been around the offense the longest, Ty and Austin, when they get into the huddle and they've got to rattle off a play, they're sharp and confident with it. Keelan is still learning those things, but he's doing a great job. So there's kind of a separation in how he's talking about them. And it's important. I think Mac versus Keelan Russell is a very interesting situation, because obviously if you have a kind of a catastrophic scenario for Ty, whether it's an injury or whether it's just you can't have him on the field anymore because of his performance, who do you go to next? And I think there's obviously a lot of hypothetical and a lot of hypothetical timeline there, but that's a tricky question. And if Austin Mack is further along and you're still kind of waiting on Keelan to get to where you want him to be and where you think he certainly can be given his talent level, then maybe it would be Austin's job as a number 2. So we'll have to see how that all shakes out and if that changes throughout the year. But as Alex said, there's no surprise that it's going to be Ty Simpson, and Ty Simpson's going to be starting against Tallahassee. If it's not, then it will be the upset of the century.
It feels like a job where they always knew the person they wanted to hire, but HR told them you've got to, interview X number of candidates before you make the decision. So you interview everybody and you wait for somebody to surprise you. And the first scrimmage doesn't surprise you. That's your audition. Okay, we're good. That's kind of, they like Austin Mack. They like Keelan Russell. I think they like him for 2026 a lot more than they like him for 2025. Right. And the unknown in this, and we can guess what the answer is whether they care about preserving a red shirt for Keelan or not. My inclination is they probably don't care. And if they feel like they need to put him in, they'll put him in. And in the back of my head, and Alabama fans are going to panic when they hear this, is like, could we see like a repeat of where Jalen Milroe struggles against Texas, and then you have a game the following week where it's just like, we're going to figure out if one of these other 2 quarterbacks can do it. So yes, who's second on the depth chart does matter, but I think there's enough there that if they did have to get a look at another quarterback not named Ty Simpson, they'd probably give both guys a shot.
Yeah. Right. And I think I don't know if Ty has earned the right to be like, because you're the starter day one, you're going to be the starter of the entire season just by default. Like, I don't think he necessarily has earned that or should be given that or whatever you want to say. Like, he just hasn't proven himself enough to warrant that. But I don't know if Keelan, this is going to be tough. Whenever Keelan situation,
I think Keelan on top of it.
That's tough. If Keelan will come out like Saban did 2 years ago and say the competition continues into the season, and then literally the competition continued when he benched Jalen Milroe 2 weeks into the year, I don't know if he'll publicly come out and kind of be as strong as Saban was about that, just because, again, I think he cares about the psyche of his quarterback, and he'll probably back Ty to a greater extent than Saban backed Milroe 2 years ago at this point. But effectively, I think it's still true that you could have a second quarterback. And I do think the redshirt thing with Keelan is pretty important. Whether he's 2 or 3 probably determines whether he redshirts or not. We'll have to see how many games number 2 would get into. But if you're in a situation where he's not redshirting this year, then all of a sudden, like, you're a true sophomore going into 2026. And if you're not the starter, then you're potentially wasting a second year of eligibility out of your 4. Whereas if you redshirt, then you still have 4 years left. So that's a big difference. And I think if you're in a situation where Keelan Russell's not your starter for 2026, I feel like that's a little bit behind schedule for a player of his caliber. And maybe that opens the door for Austin Mack. But otherwise, the odds seem to favor Keelan Russell starting for you in 2026. And what that means for Austin, I don't know. Like I said in the last show, this is kind of Austin's time. And not to say he squandered it, but like you would have to beat out Ty right now, I feel like, to see the field if you're Austin Mack, and it just hasn't really happened, part because of Ty.
Yeah, I know we took 9 minutes talking about why Ty is probably the starter, and I asked this, I think, 2 shows ago, and I'm going to ask it again. If you're an Alabama, like, why not just name it then? I know this was always the timeline, but if he did, like you said, Alex, kind of check his audition in this first scrimmage, and what is and I'm playing kind of devil's advocate here, if you're an Alabama fan, like, what is the harm of them coming out today and saying, hey, Ty's our starter. He's done enough. We're ready to go with him. What's the problem with that?
There's no harm, but also there's no harm in waiting a week either.
Yeah.
Because, if you do it now or versus you do it after the second scrimmage, you're just giving yourself more time. Because at the end of the day, again, I'm gonna bring up what Nick Saban said about quarterbacks all the time. It's not so much the decision he makes as who just wins the job and wins the locker room. That locker room already knows. They've known for weeks who the guy is, and they've been very careful about how they've said things, but they clearly talk about Ty differently. So how they roll out an announcement, and maybe they want to bring Yay Alabama into this. I don't know if that's part of the plan. Is a full rollout of an announcement. That's where you get the timeline. But when they announce it doesn't really matter to me. Ultimately, it's that he's finished this part of it, which is showing that you did well in the spring, that work carried over through the offseason, and you have this opportunity on your plate, and at least through one scrimmage, you played really well. So you haven't fallen off. And, whether they want him to continue that for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more days, we'll see.
Due diligence are the two words that come to mind for me. Due diligence.
Yeah.
I kind of only asked that. And I know last year is a different circumstance and everything was kind of up in the air, but we talked about it kind of. Jalen Milroe was in New York, LA, and kind of very being pushed as that starting quarterback. So I just is kind of interesting. I don't know if this staff's going to kind of try to push him the same way. I don't.
The question is, did Alabama send him to New York, or did Jalen Milroe and his representation send him to New York?
I would put a lot of money on the latter in that particular.
That is very, very, very fair.
There was no question that Jalen was the guy,
right?
As I've written before. Like it, love it, hate it, whatever it was, I don't think they really had a better option than just to roll with him.
Yeah, absolutely. There's our QB talk. The kind of protector of the QB is the offensive line. We're going to talk about this probably for the whole season. And I don't want to take too much of your thoughts away, but I know Mike put up a similar thought. I had the same thing. It's with this whole Jaden Roberts scenario, Geno and Cam starting shouldn't be frowned upon. Go, Mike.
No, I think Jaden Roberts is a pretty good player, but he's not Larry Allen. I feel like people kind of made the jump pretty quickly with him. He's in the starting lineup. He had a good half year when he came into the lineup, 2023. The A&M game is when he first started and then finished out that year and became a really solid player. Last year, he rotated a lot. People forget, Geno Vandermark was in the game a lot at right guard because of Jaden Roberts' injuries. And I don't know if he solidified himself, Roberts, to a point where you're can't possibly not start. I feel like people have kind of jumped the gun a little bit on that. So, Geno, I think, has always been in a pretty good spot to see a lot of playing time this year, whether it was at left guard or right guard. I think the window for right guard was probably open more than we realized. And now that you have Jaden Roberts banged up again, which, is a recurring theme for him, that probably opens the door even more. And, Cam Dewberry's a player that has started in the SEC before, at A&M. And Geno started in the Big Ten for Michigan State and has a history with Chris Kapilovic. So, I think for Cam, it was probably more a physical thing, getting in shape for Alabama, losing the weight. He has the body, to play in the SEC, no doubt. For Geno, I think he is probably on the lower end of the scale for body in the SEC, but he's a technician, he's a grinder, et cetera. All the other things that come into play, I think he has. So, for Roberts, it's kind of the athletic ability and the raw talent. It's just being healthy and being able to do it all in the field. So you have 3 pretty good players there. But I don't know if it's a situation where you can say Jaden Roberts can't possibly start, or you can't possibly start Geno Vandermark. I think they're comfortable with either of those possibilities, and we'll have to see how it plays out. If you told me that Cam and Geno were the starters week 1 and Jaden rotates in somehow, it wouldn't surprise me. If you told me that Roberts and Geno were the starters and Cam rotates in, that wouldn't surprise me. I feel like we're going to see some level of rotation, and I think it's a lot of that's planned.
Yeah.
Third series of a game, you'll see a different guy come in. That's how they did it last year. It would not shock me in the least if they did that again this year.
Yeah, at the end of the day, Jaden has not met the potential of what we think he is, and some of that's through no fault of his own. Injuries have been a problem, but you're a coaching staff, and ultimately you have to play players who are available to play, which means putting these other guys on the field. As I wrote in the column last week, like, it was unexpected, but I think it says as much about the talent roster upgrades that they've made, that you bring in Gino a year ago, and he's able to be your sixth man on the offensive line and perform at a really high level, coming off the bench, which is not easy to do. And then you bring in Cam, and suddenly you've got three guys for two spots that are all pretty good across the board. A lot of teams would like to have Jaden Roberts, and the potential for him to be good is still there. So it's not as much of a concern. Honestly, the bigger concern for me is like depth at tackle more than it is the interior of the offensive line. There's going to be intrigue in terms of who starts, but the concern level for me is, can Caden Proctor stay healthy, and can Wilkin Formby play and take that next step in his development? All signs are good on those, but it's just that you don't have a lot. You're suddenly, those guys are gone. You're looking at Michael Carroll, Jackson Lloyd, two true freshmen, or maybe you move Olas Allen in, who this coaching staff trusts, but just has not played a lot of high-level football. So a lot of intrigue, or more concern in terms of depth of tackle.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys that are going to be running behind that line is obviously the running backs. And Alex, one of your favorite topics, I feel like, is the running backs in this roster over the last couple of years, and all that has come with it. It seems like all we've heard is how great Jam has been, and it was more of the same coming out of the weekend. Alex, we'll start with you. Just what's kind of your take of the running backs? I know last week it was I don't know exactly what word you used or whatever it was, but kind of just, again, what are your thoughts? What does Daniel Hill feel like he may play a little bit more than Richard Young? Kind of, where are we going to have to wait and see how Ryan Grubb plays with the running backs? Kind of just where are we at?
The word you used was mid, which was
I used mid, and then
Jackson Dart
changed to a different word. I can't remember what it was, but yeah, mid. Look, Jam had a good day. By all accounts, he had a nice run, ran over somebody, he caught a touchdown pass. What I'd like to see more from him on a consistent basis, and I don't know if this happened on Saturday. I don't really know if we'll know until we get into the season. Can you not run into somebody? Can you find a hole and run through it? Because, look, the physical traits are there. Like, he is tough. He runs through contact. He's got wheels. He can catch the football. That pass from Jalen Milroe to Jam down the sideline and against Georgia was just like, if you told me then Alabama's going to win a national championship, I would have said, yeah, it's going to happen. Because Jalen looked like a beast. Everything was working. It's the vision part of it, and can that show up? So I'm not going to go overboard after one scrimmage. And I don't know what the pecking order is. I don't know it's necessarily a bad thing, but I do not think there's a ton of separation between Richard Young, Daniel Hill, and Dre Washington. Heck, we've heard more about A.K. Deer in the first week of practice than we did all of spring. I still don't think he's going to factor into the rotation very much, because I think his development's more long-term. But I think we're going to see a lot of those guys rotate, and who can just be the guy who can provide some punch. And, I got a story coming tomorrow from talking to Robert Gillespie off of Media Day. And basically, like, I think it's the same thing. Like, he said, like, look, we've got to – because I asked him, like, with Jalen Milroe and the quarterback run, it changed the dynamics. And he acknowledged that. But I asked him, did it take away from the rhythm of it? And he's like, no. Like, at the end of the day, you've got to work with the opportunity you have. And that's why I think even if it's only 2 to 3 carries for each of those guys behind Jam, somebody's got to make the most of those and show that they can be the second guy. Because there's promise there, but they've got to get more explosivity, if that's even the word, out of that position. And I'm just not holding my breath that Jam's the guy. It'd be a pleasant surprise. It really would. And he's got a good camp, but I need to see it in the season.
Explosiveness, I think, is the Merriam-Webster version of that.
You got weird words like socializing stuff.
Right.
It's just,
yeah. Hey, do you guys want some breaking AP poll?
Yeah.
Breakdown.
Yeah.
Number 1, Texas, 25 first place votes. This is the preseason AP poll that just came out. Number 2, Penn State, 23 first place votes. Number 3, Ohio State, 11 first place votes. Number 4, Dabo Sweeney's Clemson Tigers with 4 first place votes. Number 5, the Georgia Bulldogs, 1 first place vote. Number 6, the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, no first place votes. Number 7, the Oregon Ducks, 1 first place vote. And at number 8, Alabama. Number 9, LSU. Number 10, Miami. So Alabama in the same location as its coaches poll. This will be the lowest opening poll ranking for Alabama since 2008.
Instant reaction, Mike. Too high, too low?
It's actually lower than I would have expected. I know some people had them as high as 5. I think Greg McElroy had them as at number 5. I feel like they could have gone up there, but look, still a 9-spot improvement from where they finished last year. And when you're changing quarterbacks, I mean, you don't really know how a team's going to do. And that's true for
a lot of those guys.
Right. All those teams, with the exception of Penn State and Clemson. So, and LSU, I guess. So, like, you don't really know. But for Alabama to improve 9 spots from last year and people to consider them a top 10 team is still a good thing. And when you had a team that missed the playoffs last year. So I guess it's all relative, but it is, the lowest that they've had in a long time.
Yeah. Anywhere in the 5 to 10 range, I think makes sense for them. And really the top 5 you can put in a hat and kind of mix them around. Clemson is just, man, they're loaded. I think they've got a really good shot this year, especially in a weak ACC, which feels redundant to say, but they've got all the pieces. I know this isn't a Clemson podcast, but they also had those pieces last year, and they didn't win a national championship.
This is at times a Clemson podcast.
Yeah,
I remember listening.
Mike spends a lot of time talking about Dabo, and unfortunately, he can't talk about Jimbo as much this year. But maybe he will, because Jimbo wants back into coaching. So
he's in the news.
Alabama analyst Jimbo Fisher. I don't know. I don't think so.
Maybe he can join when Nick Saban gets back into coaching. He can join his coaching search again.
Here's a good question for Alabama fans: who got more voting points in the AP poll, Toledo or Auburn? Toledo.
Like I might know the answer. Wow. There's kind of our offensive side. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to add, maybe something that popped out on the scrimmage, but defense looked like James Smith's dealing with an injury. I don't think he played or dressed out however they went about it. Alex, you kind of talked about it on previous shows. Who's going to be the guy behind the guys who are supposed to be the guy? And you look at the depth of the defensive line, kind of just it's being proven right here. What's kind of your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I don't know that anybody really flashed particularly. Like you hear good things about Yonze Pierre, and then you see him in the interview areas at the back of the line. So I don't know, and I'm not too concerned about the James Smith injury. My understanding is it's just something keeping him out precautionary wise. So it's not a big deal. I will say though, a lot of people are happy that there have been only 3 interceptions through this point in camp. There have only been 3 interceptions through this point in camp. You can say it however way you want to say it. Very curious to see if the turnovers that were positive, like this defense did a good job of it a year ago. That is such a hard thing to replicate. Will they be able to do that? Because we've talked ad nauseum about how good this secondary is. Will that translate into momentum plays? Haven't really happened through camp. So maybe the quarterbacks are just really good, but maybe those guys need to make more plays. I don't know.
Well, and not to real quick, I had that brought up, like kind of good. And I saw so many different, like, oh, this is great for the quarterbacks. It's bad for the secondary. Like, what's your Mike? We'll start with you. I know Alex, you kind of talked about it right there, but Mike, what's your instant reaction right there? And then go into explain. Like, is that better for the offense or the defense?
If you're forcing me to say something, I'd say it's better for the offense, obviously.
Yeah, right.
But, like, there's just so much context that's missing. Like, you're throwing 5-yard outs the entire practice. Like, you're probably not going to have too many interceptions. What is the percentage of passes that should have been intercepted? Like, there's just a lot of context that's missing there. Obviously, it's good when a quarterback doesn't throw a pick, but you just don't know what the risk level was going into it. So Yeah, I mean, everything that happens good in a preseason practice when you're practicing against your own team is kind of automatically by default bad for the other side. That's just kind of how it works. So this is a defense that certainly loves to force turnovers. That's kind of how they're built and get interceptions. I think Kane Wommack's teams have generally been pretty high on that list. So the fact that they don't really have very many in camp, does that mean anything for the season? I don't know, but it could. So I don't know. Look, it's one of those things like, I'm just saying hypothetically, let's say Ty Simpson in the first quarter of the Florida State game throws a pick. Is anybody going to say, oh, it's great that Alabama didn't have any picks in the preseason? No, everybody's going to forget about what we're talking about right now, and it's going to be about what happens in the here and now. So
I think it was Eagles last year. Like they're like the whole report was Jalen Hurts hasn't thrown an interception yet in training camp or whatever, which that was just like a kind of funny discourse.
And I said on this podcast and got heckled for saying I don't care really how many interceptions a quarterback throws. I care more how many touchdowns they throw.
You did get heckled. I do remember that.
So, like, look, interceptions are tough. Nobody wants to create turnovers, but you also need a playmaker at that position who's not afraid to throw the football. Yep. And in practice, you should kind of let it rip. So, look, I'm not going to get carried away with it. I will say one name that I consistently keep hearing about is Cam Calhoun. So just kind of keep it in the back of your head. I don't know that he's going to be the guy at Husky necessarily, but you just hear more and more about this guy. He can make plays. He's got a personality to him that other teammates thrive off of. Where will he fit in the rotation? That is one guy I did want to not neglect mentioning coming out of the weekend.
I don't know. Is he even a top 3 corner? Because Dijon Lee could very well be in that spot as well. And then you talk about next year, is it Dijon Lee and Xavier Brown? Yeah. Like, how do you hold back Dijon Lee? So
how do you hold back Chuck McDonald?
I don't know. But look, if this was the NFL, Cam Calhoun would be trade bait. You're like, all right, here's a really good player that we don't know if we have a starting spot for. Yeah. What can we get for him? But this is not the NFL. So
it's not.
I was going to say, it might be by the time I publish this.
Look, that's just, I don't know. Like, if you're not playing him at Husky, if he's not one of your starting corners, maybe he can be the third corner. Maybe you get that guy rotated in. But do you want to take Damani Jackson off the field? Do you want to take Xavier Brown off the field? Like, how much is that going to happen? I don't think they're going to be rotating as much as they were last year when they had Mbakwe and Deshaun Jones and Xavier all rotating, and Damani for that matter, because you got 2 pretty good ones. So I don't know what that means for Cam. I don't know what it means next year. So, and you got Jordan Edmonds coming in. We'll see. But I forget what I was talking about. I forget what my purpose is.
Good problems to have. Good problems to have.
You're talking about heckling with picks and that's what I wanted to say. Look, if Ty Simpson starts throwing picks like Jalen Milroe did against Oklahoma last year, the pitchforks will be out in Tuscaloosa in the surrounding region. So even if you want him to be a playmaker, and that's Kalen DeBoer's kind of desire, is to have the quarterback be the player who can drive the ball down the field. If Ty Simpson starts doing that, that's what's going to get you in trouble with the fans. Not that that means anything, but there's going to be a lot of pressure on Ty if he starts throwing picks. That's not good.
Yeah, there's our kind of weekend review. I know you'll hear from Coach Womack and Coach Grubb, I think, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Mike and Alex will, of course, be there and providing complete coverage. Alex, we'll start with you. What's kind of your leading question or concern, question, whatever, however you want to put it, going into these next couple of days before we get another podcast in later this week?
Yeah, the questions are more on the defensive side of the ball because I think we're going to get more clarity on offense. But, like, again, who are those guys who are having success getting home, rushing the passer? I'm still curious how the inside linebacker battle is going to end up looking. My gut says it'll obviously be Deontay Lawson and whoever, probably Justin Jefferson. But Nikhai Green is a player who came in with a lot of experience, brings something different to the table in terms of the tackle for loss numbers that he was able to accumulate at Colorado. It's last year of eligibility. How will they find ways to get that guy on the field, and what will kind of the snap distribution look like at inside linebacker? Because last year was unique, where they played 3 guys, where Jefferson was that third, but Jihad was a guy who moved around a lot, so it sort of facilitated that. And the other part of that is those guys are going to be really instrumental in the rush defense. And the rush defense at time last year was not great. So how will that sort of all that picture sort of come together at that position? That's sort of what I'm looking for.
Mike?
It would be pretty funny if Ryan Grubb just comes out tomorrow and is like, yeah, Ty's our starter. I mean, that's basically what he did in the spring. I don't think we were expecting that. And wouldn't it be the most shocking thing in the world? But what am I looking for this week? Was that the question I'm supposed to answer? Yeah, I mean, it's you're at the point where you start to shift gears. Like, how many competitions are really starting jobs are really up for grabs right now? I think
that might be our next podcast. So that might be a good podcast idea. So
but there's not much. Is my point. Like the punter competition is still one to watch, and we're not really going to know much about that until week 1. I mean, the guard thing we've talked about. I don't think the quarterback job is all that intriguing at this point. Like, there's not a whole lot of competition starting wise you need to settle this week. I think you just want to stay healthy. Like I said in the last show, you get to a certain point in camp. It's like you get even a little injury right now. The game's only 2.5 weeks away. Or at least you're missing practice 2 weeks from now, the week of the game, by being injured. So even an ankle or whatever it is, like I think you start to want to be a little bit careful with that stuff and dial it back with some of the contact in practice. And that's kind of where you're at. I don't know if you need to decide a whole lot and you kind of let things play out at quarterback a little bit more. But like, what is really going to happen in a quarterback competition that's going to change it this week? I don't think there's going to be much.
Yeah, that's to my point of just name it now, but that's just devil's advocate there. Kind of to put a bow on today, and what we'll do, kind of try to incorporate into every episode. Alex had a good idea, kind of getting the board more involved on the YouTube and on our podcast as well. I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, it was kind of just a simple over under passing yards for Ty, and I believe our user set it at 3,250 passing yards. I believe it was 32,000. I'd probably pick the under. Alex, your idea, your kind of submission, over under, and kind of real quick explanation why.
I can't push because I actually think it's a pretty good line to set. I looked back through the years. Jalen threw for 2,844 yards last year. I think he will pass that total just by nature of what the offense will look like. Bryce in 2022 threw for 3,328 yards, but there was an injury as part of that, which sort of changed it.
Missed a game and a half.
So can he reach there? Sort of that way I ended up looking at it was there were 4 quarterbacks in the SEC that passed that total a year ago. Jackson Dart, Garrett Nussmeier, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers. Do we ultimately think Ty Simpson will play to that level? I think he's going to be just a little bit. I think he's probably going to be in the more 3,100 yards. But it would not surprise me, again, if these receivers are what I think they can be with Jeremy, Ryan, and Isaiah Horton. Maybe it gets there, but I think if I was putting money on it, and this is why I don't bet because I'm terrified of putting money in, I'd probably go under, but like by that much, by barely that much.
Yeah, I mean, season totals are always tricky in college football because teams play a varying amount of games. It's only become more pronounced with the 12-team playoff. So, I mean, you could have as few as 12 games theoretically if they don't make a bowl game. I mean, that's the lowest. Or you could have as many as 17 if you make the SEC championship game. And then you're playing, in theory, you could play a first-round game still. So that's first round, quarterfinal, semifinal, national championship game. 4 playoff games plus 13. Yeah, that's 17 total games you can play. 3,200 can be achieved in games. It would be surprising if you didn't. It would be honestly surprising if you play 13 games like you did last year and you didn't have 3,200. I mean, 3,250, I should say. That would have been 18th in the country last year. So with the amount of receiving talent that you have, you're going to be running a lot less with your quarterback. And let me just make a point there. I think Ty's going to want to run. Ty has always been a little bit more of a runner in terms of scrambling and trying to take off than people think. And I think we're going to see that more than people expect. But overall, your offense, in theory, should be less geared towards the quarterback run and more geared towards the quarterback passing. And if you had 2,800 yards with Jalen Milroe last year in 13 games, I feel like you can get 3,250 with Ty Simpson. So it would be a little bit of a disappointment if you didn't. It would also be a disappointment if you didn't play some playoff games that give you the extra amount of yardage there to make it. So I would say the over, but I don't know if it'll be 4,000. Like, I mean, 4,000 would be probably top 5 in the country ish.
Yeah. I think Jackson Dart hit 4,000, but that's
there was 6 guys who did last year. It was Kyle McCord, Cam Ward, Jackson Dart, Shadur, Nussmeier, and Will Howard.
Yeah.
And then final kind of thing, put you on the spot here. It feels like every time Coach Womack kind of speaks, there's always a guy that maybe we don't hear as much about that's doing really, really good job and doing all the right things and attacking the day. Who's kind of maybe, if anything, who's maybe your pick that he maybe might say this week? Just for fun.
Mike?
I don't know. How about Zay Mincy?
Okay.
I don't know. Again, Zay Mincy's kind of in the Cam Calhoun category. It's like you want to keep him. You want him on your roster, but it's like, where do you put him?
Yeah.
If this was the NFL, Zay Mincy would be a big-time trade asset, but it's not the NFL. So, I think there's more of a clear path, and I'm going way down the rabbit hole, but I think there's more of a clear path for Zay Mincy to start next year than there is Cam Calhoun, but that's probably my pick in terms of a guy that maybe will get a mention at some point here.
Maybe Jordan Renaud gets mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
I think Beeman continues to be a guy. I know Brett, you're on the Jeremiah Beeman train. Those are two that sort of popped to my mind, but there's always a guy. It's like when he came out the first practice of spring. It's like, oh yeah, Dre is the other Husky. Like, wait, what? Thought it was a cornerback. He might hit us with a little curveball. We'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. Well, guys, appreciate you listening. Appreciate you guys joining on for another episode of Roll Pod. We'll be back later this week after we hear from Kane Womack and Ryan Grubb. So appreciate you guys. And we're going to, like I said, incorporate the board a lot more on this. So anyone has some similar thoughts to a Ty Simpson over or something like that, we're very much down to discuss it on Roll Pod. Thank you guys.